Okay, translating trig functions. We're only going to translate sine, cosine, and tangent. We're not going to translate cosecant, secant, or cotangent. Okay? But basically, we know the basic gist of sine, cosine, and tangent. But now we're going to stretch it, we're going to move it to the right and left, and we're going to move it up and down. Okay? So phase shifts are horizontal shifts. So if it's plus h, it moves to the left. If it's minus h, it moves to the right. So remember, if it's inside, it's opposite of what you think. So if it's plus, you move left. If it's minus, you move right. So an example of that, y equals sine of theta minus pi. That shifts pi units to the right because it's minus, but it's opposite of what we think, so we're moving to the right. Okay, now y equals tangent of theta plus pi fourths. That shifts pi fourths units to the left. Because it's opposite of what you think, that's positive, so we're going to move left. So horizontal shifts are opposite of what you think. Maybe write that down. Vertical shifts are exactly what you think they're going to do. So plus k shifts up, minus k shifts down. Okay, so if we have y equals tangent of theta plus 2, that's going to shift 2 units up, to the up. That should just say 2 units up, not to the up. Anyways. And then y equals cosine of theta minus 4, that shifts 4 units down, not to the down, down. Okay? So putting it all together, your A is your amplitude. Your B is the number of cycles between 0 and 2 pi for sine and cosine. And it's 0 between pi for tangent and cotangent. So this is for sine, cosine, cosecant, and secant. And then it's 0 and pi for tangent and cotangent. And you just use B to find your period. So B is used to find our period. You should know that already, but. And then H is your, maybe. H is your phase shift, horizontal. It's inside, that's going to move left and right. K is your, and that's opposite of what you think. K is your vertical shift. That's going to move up and down, and that's exactly what you think it's going to do. So inside is opposite, outside is exactly what you think it's going to do. Okay? Now the midline, shifting your graph vertically will create a new horizontal axis, and we're going to call this axis the midline. And this references the line that the graph oscillates. So it references the line that this graph is going up and down, up and down, up and down. So if we look over here at our example, we have y equals sine of theta is just our normal graph. We shifted it up, so y equals sine of theta plus 4. That moved our graph up 4, which changed our midline to y equals 4. Okay, I'll get more into that in a second. So for these ones, let's just state the amplitude, period, phase shift, vertical shift, and midline. So my A is 1/2. My B is 3, my H is 0 because we don't have an H, and K is -5. So my amplitude here is my A value, which is 1/2. My period is 2 pi divided by B, since this is sine, which is 2 pi divided by 3 because my B is 3. My phase shift, there isn't one because my H equals 0, so it doesn't move left or right. My vertical shift, it moves down 5. So my midline is y equals -5. So whatever k equals, that's your midline. But you just, instead of k equals, it'll be y equals. So if k equaled 4, my midline would be y equals 4. If k equaled 1/3, my midline would be y equals 1/3. Okay? Let's look at B. So my A is 4, my B is 2, my H is 2 pi, and K is 1. So my amplitude, that's wrong. My amplitude is not 4. My amplitude, this is tangent, is undefined. because you don't have an amplitude on tangent. You have a fake amplitude, so A is our fake amplitude, but the amplitude here is undefined. Make sure you write undefined because that is going to go away in a second because I haven't figured out how to make it stay. So make sure you write amplitude is undefined. Okay, it's not 4. Amplitude is not 4. My period, this is tangent, so it's pi divided by b, which is pi divided by 2, and that's all we can do. So my period's pi over 2. My phase shift is left 2 pi because that's positive 2 pi. It's opposite of what you think, so it's left 2 pi. My vertical shift is up 1, and my midline is y equals 1. Oh my gosh, super struggling right now. So this should be y equals 1. This is undefined. Okay. Let's go to this one. So first let's label our A, B, H, and K. So our A is 1, our B is 2, our H is pi halves, and we don't have a K, so it's 0. So my amplitude here is 1. My period is 2 pi divided by B, which is 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. My phase shift is left pi halves. My vertical shift does not exist. We don't have one. And my midline is y equals 0. So always start with your phase shift. So we moved left pi halves. So I'm going to draw a point at pi halves. Since this is sine, you always have a point right where you start. So do your phase shift and put a point there since this is sine. Okay. Then my vertical shift, I didn't move up or down, so it doesn't change. And then my period. So the period is pi. Pi, if you look between 0 and pi, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 units there. So I'm going to go from this dot and I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4 and draw a point right there. I just said all that. Draw a point right there. Sine, first, last, and middle are the same. So I'm going to draw a point in the middle. Then my amplitude is 1, so I'm going to go halfway between those first two, go up 1. Halfway between the second two, go down 1. And then I can just connect that. And since this is sine, this just continues to repeat. So that's going to repeat right there, and right there, and right there, and right there. Okay? And you have to draw all of those. I'm sure I messed up this one too. The amplitude is undefined if I wrote that it's not. So A is 1/2, B is 1, H is 0, and K is -3. So my amplitude is not 1/2. My amplitude is undefined. My fake amplitude is 1/2. So my fake amplitude is 1/2, but the actual amplitude is undefined. Okay, that's going to go away. Oh my gosh, struggle. The period is pi over b, which is pi over 1, which is just pi. Phase shift, we don't have one, doesn't exist because h is 0. Vertical shift, we go down 3, and the midline is y equals -3. So I have to find my asymptote since this is tangent. So the asymptote is the period divided by 2. The period is pi, so that's pi halves. We don't have a phase shift, so we don't have to worry about that. I'm just going to go and I'm going to draw my asymptote at pi halves and at -pi halves. Now there's 4 units between there, so I'm going to go 4 units more to the right, draw an asymptote right there. 4 units more to the left, draw an asymptote right there. Now my vertical shift, I moved down 3, so I'm going to go down 3, draw a point right there. And then my fake amplitude, not my real amplitude, my fake amplitude is 1/2, so I'm going to go over 1, up 1/2, draw a point right there. Over 1, down 1/2, draw a point right there. Because tangent, you start low and high. We can just connect those and draw that graph. Then that repeats there, and there, and there, and there. And it continues to repeat throughout this whole thing. Okay, so again, the amplitude is undefined. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's go to cosine, maybe. Cosine, so y equals 4 cosine of theta minus 3 pi fourths minus 1. So my a is 4, my b is 1, my h is negative 3/4, and my k is negative 1. So my amplitude is 4. We have an amplitude because it's cosine, so that is correct. My period is 2 pi over 1, which is 2 pi. My phase shift is right 3 pi over 4 because it's opposite of what you think. My vertical shift is down 1, and my midline is y equals negative 1. Okay, so my phase shift is right 3/4. So I'm going to go right 3/4, and I'm going to draw a little line right there. And then my vertical shift is down 1, so I'm going to go down 1 and draw a horizontal line right there. This is the new axis that I'm going to work off of. Okay, so let's treat where those cross as 0, 0. Okay, so my amplitude here is 4. And cosine, you always start your a value. So I'm starting from that 0, 0 point that I just created, and I'm going to go up 4, draw a point right there. And on cosine, first and last are the same, and they're at your amplitude. Well, my period is 2 pi. If we go back to the original axis, from 0 to 2 pi is 8 units. So I'm going to go 8 units from that point that I just drew. It's off the graph, but I'm going to draw it because it's only 2 more off the graph. So I'm going to draw that right there. Then you go halfway between those, and then you go down twice your amplitude. So you go down to negative 5. You're going to go down 8, so 3 minus 8 is negative 5. And I can just draw that right there. Then I'm going to draw the left side of this graph. So I'm going to go over 8, draw that point, go to the middle, go down 8, draw that point. We also have this point right there. Then I can just finish drawing that graph. Okay, so you can do the same thing on sine and tangent. I know I didn't do it in those first 2 examples, but if you find your phase shift and your vertical shift, you can draw a new axis there and then work off of that. Treat that as your axis or as your graph, whatever. Okay, I will save those next 2 for class so that we can do them next time. And please remember to take the quiz. I'll see you guys tomorrow.